Welcome to Better Together, a Vaishnava family podcast.
A podcast where we talk about family life from a Bhakti Yoga perspective. We are your hosts, Aksh.
And I'm Gopika. Welcome to episode 5. This one is a little different. We're calling it 9 years together, but how? Anniversary reflections. So we're just around the corner from our 9th anniversary, and I feel like anniversaries are a reflective time for us, a time to cherish all the positives. Sometimes it can bring up the challenges that we've encountered in our relationship. And wow, 9 years. We've been through a lot.
Yeah, it's almost close to 10. And I feel like although some people would look at 10 as not very long, I would say it does feel like a milestone coming. Yeah, it's been a while. And
a long
we've
time.
Learned a lot.
Yeah. And the title, it seems a bit of a joke, 9 years together, how? But actually, there's statistics to back up our title of, wow, we are making it through 9 years. Because did you know that the average length of an American marriage is 8.2 years? So,
wow.
But more statistics here. Look, I did some research. Studies done by divorce lawyers show that years 5 through 8 are actually the most challenging. It makes sense to me because I feel like years 5 through 8 are generally the years where couples have small children, and the impact that having children have on a relationship is seismic.
Yeah.
Like, it's literally groundbreaking. At least I feel like it has been for us. Yeah. So I'm not surprised that marriages get shaken during this time. But yeah, I mean, we made it to year 9. And so let me ask you, how did we make it? How have we made it through all these years and are still together?
When I think back to all the times that we've had challenges and what's kind of always brought us back, it's as that poem that, read in the first episode, it's willing to do the work it takes. And I feel like at least at some level, even if at some points we maybe even really didn't like each other, or there was just something that was really difficult, that we were willing to sit down and talk about it or talk about it with someone else and to just constantly work through it. I think there's a perception maybe everything is good with us as a couple, but we've had a lot of challenges. We have very different personalities, sometimes quite the opposite, and we come from different backgrounds and family experiences, and all of that has been unearthed in the work that we've had to do together to understand our past and understand who we are and understand how we're kind of changing as we're walking this journey together of life. Specifically in terms of work, I think spending a lot of time with the GVT and the devotees there, as well as our own counseling sessions, have been huge for us.
Yeah, totally. I agree. I think just constantly doing the work that it takes through counseling, but also spiritually. I know for me, cultivating my own relationship with Krishna outside of you and outside of our family has been really important for me. I remember hearing that Prabhupada writes in one of the purports in Srimad Bhagavatam that one day we all have to fly our own plane. And since I heard that, I think that's really stuck with me, because I think at the beginning of our relationship, I really wanted to find a partner to do spiritual life with. And partly because I think that's what we connected over in our service. And so I really had this almost romanticized version of what our life would look like together, sadhana together, that we would always feel the same way about Krishna and Guru and, just where we were at in terms of feelings and commitment. Yeah. And as the years have gone by, I've learned that that is not something our relationship can be dependent on.
Mm.
You know, like a joint spiritual life. We all have to have our own relationship with Krishna. I need to have my own sadhana that I am responsible for. Like I remember in the early days of our marriage, I think I would get really frustrated that you never wanted to be the one to wake me up in the morning
Yeah.
to chant. Do you
Yeah.
remember that? I would
Yeah.
get so frustrated. I was like, why don't you ever wake me up? Like,
Oh.
and I just wanted to have that like partner teamwork motivation spirit to chant in the morning. But I think the acceptance that my life is still my responsibility, not my partner's responsibility. And I'm still working on that in many ways. But I think that's some work that I've had to accept to do and I continue to do. That being said, I think that despite the fact that we all fly our own plane, you and I are very different. We always joke that if we met outside of the service situation that we met in, so, you know, of course, those of you listening may not know our backstory, but we became friends through serving for the Rutgers Bhakti Club. And that's kind of how we got to know each other and were inspired by one another, you could say, during that time. But we always joke that if you and I were set up or just like matched and we just went on a date outside of that experience, we would have never gotten together. Like, I don't think we would ever go on a second date with each other if the first date was like the first time we actually, you know? So that keeping that spark that we connect through service, and that's actually the primary place of our compatibility for us, trying to stay connected to that, even in small capacities. I have felt like that's a lifeline for us. And then the last thing I just want to add, because I really feel that we should credit our survival to blessings from other people, because we really are so different from one another, aren't we?
Yeah. I like all these points that you're making, and I had many of the same. But also the idea of having mentors who are ahead of us in this particular family life and being able to bounce ideas off them or come to them for guidance, and even just having regular check-ins. That's also been huge. Yeah, the other thing I could say is that I had heard this quote from somebody about when you marry, that you're actually marrying 3 people, not just the person that's in front of you who you believe you know, but you're also marrying that person's past. And then you're also marrying that person's future and what they will become. And learning to appreciate the past and to walk with them courageously into the future and who they will become certainly just requires a bit of acceptance and surrender, to the point of what you're saying, because you don't really know where everything's going to go.
Yeah.
And looking back, there's so many things I could have tried to predict, but I had no idea where it's going to be in 9 years at that point. And what you learn and how each person grows individually and then also collectively as a couple.
Yeah.
So on the flip side, what do you think that we could be doing better?
We could be doing a lot better, I think, especially right now. Although I feel like I tend to be hard on myself. So self-compassion. We are in a very challenging chapter of life where it is very difficult to prioritize your marriage. That being said, I do feel like I could be doing some things better. And I think one thing that I can do better is to verbalize appreciation for the tasks that you do and for all the ways that you provide for us right now. I know it's really hard because for me, I tend to fall into the counting score category sometimes when I am in the grind of so much hard work on a daily basis. It's easy to feel like I'm doing more, and then that makes me spiral downward to not feeling grateful or feeling appreciative. So I feel like I can do that a lot better. And I do genuinely appreciate how hard you work for our family and that you are financially supporting us completely so that we can live comfortably, and that you are willing to also have these difficult conversations so we can live life based on our values. You're not really like so stubborn or stuck in your ways. You're always willing to talk about things and adjust. And I really appreciate that.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, my answer is something I feel like I could work on, and that's being more emotionally connected on a regular basis. Like, I think that's something that I've always been trying to get better at. One of the things that I always remember that is helpful to me is sliding door moments, right? And this idea that it's not about always a big gesture. And that's still hard for me to grasp. Like, when I think about, like, our anniversary
I
or
know.
bigger, these big days, birthdays, and like, you got to do something, like, make her feel special. Like, but, and then of course that should be part of it to whatever extent one can, but it's actually the day-to-day stuff, and it's a day-to-day investment in the emotional bank account. So I understand that, but I still can do better about it. And then the other thing I think is also just like having more fun together.
Yeah.
I do love serving with you, and that itself is it's fun.
Yeah.
But I don't think we like do enough like recreational fun
Yeah, we're like too
things.
serious.
So I think that could be something we could do better.
Yeah, just being a little more lighthearted and taking life easy.
Yeah.
I agree. I think that sometimes we like to be reflective and pick apart everything to the nth degree, and sometimes maybe it's just not that serious, and
Yeah.
having that attitude could help
Yeah.
in stressful times.
Yeah.
I also wanted to share one more thing that came to me in terms of what I could do better. And in this regard, I remembered two quotes that were shared with us during our very first GBT retreat.
Yeah.
And they were paradigm shifting for me in terms of how I viewed relationships in general and how I viewed marriage. And I just felt like sometimes it's, for me, I lose sight of this like profound lens with which we can approach our marriage. So maybe I can read them. So the first quote is by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. He says that the cardinal principle of Grihastha Ashram is that no one may be the owner of any property or service of another. Everyone is only a servant whose activities are ever in the service of the Lord. Marrying and giving in marriage do not give rise to any rights of a master, either to the husband or to the wife. Men and women are joined in wedlock for the purpose of serving each other in the performance of the joint service of Krishna. The wife is not an object of enjoyment of the husband, nor vice versa. They marry for pleasing the Lord, not for pleasing themselves. They chose for their partners only such persons who serve God better than themselves. They offer themselves to be accepted by their partners for the favor of being allowed to share in their superior service of Hari.
Wow.
So I feel like, typically, or at least before the GVT, I kind of had this notion that, the Bhagavatam does talk a lot about women being the downfall of men. Like if a man is to become attached to a woman, it's like some sections.
Yeah.
It's like the downfall of his existence. Like there are some places in Bhagavatam that talk about women like that, and sometimes that comes out, in our culture. And so this quote was so profound to me because this was deep in terms of Vaishnava theology and what we believe at the core of the core. Not that we are just spirit souls within, but that we treat each other as superior servants of God. That you're actually doing a better job than me. And that's hard for me to like accept that you're doing a better job than me, especially in this phase of life where I'm, I have all of this angst about being a stay-at-home mom. So I feel like that's something that I could definitely do better with. So on a lighter note, do you have a favorite memory or story from our 9 years together, and why is it your favorite?
when we first got married and were serving at the temple, it was a bit of a drive
Mm-hmm.
to go back and forth from our house at that time.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed the car rides, and I know I'm not mentioning a specific moment or story, but all of those times, that whole, it's a few years, every Sunday we had a lot of time in the car together and would talk about all kinds of things. And I always felt so connected to you during that time. Yeah, it was like sad when we had got home, and obviously we could continue the conversation, but it's just different when you're stuck in a car and focused on each other. That's one that comes to mind right away.
Yeah.
What about
I
you?
love those car rides. Because before we got married, I did a lot of solo driving to and from programs, and
Yeah.
I would always have thoughts, like thoughts about the lecture and thoughts about what happened at the program and ISKCON culture and this, that, this, that. I would always be buzzing with all these things. And I would have to get into a car and drive by myself somewhere, sometimes far, go back to my dorm.
Yeah.
So I think after we got married and we could leave the temple together and leave programs together, just being able to share and debrief and dream together about what we wanted to do and what we hoped for our service, it was so nourishing. It was really nice. I love those car rides.
Yeah.
I actually also wrote down the year that we went to Vrindavan together for Kartik Parikrama.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite times with you, is sharing that spiritual experience with you. I think that when we first got married, we struggled to sync spiritually, and maybe we'll share the details of that for another podcast. But I think we just were in different places, and it just was like hard for us to find a jive, a shared experience. I think we related to Kirtan differently, and it was just, we were never syncing. I still remember like the first Sadhu Sangha we went to together, it was just like almost like we were just clashing with how we were experiencing Sadhu Sangha.
Yeah.
But going to Kartik Parikrama together and being able to go to the Dham together, share the same lectures, share the same environment, energy, it was so beautiful. I really felt, they say that Krishna should be the center of your marriage, and there's so much strength that comes when you keep Krishna at the center of your marriage. And I feel like it's something that's said a lot, but you're just kind of like, okay, yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
What does that look like? What does it mean to keep Krishna in the center of your marriage on the day-to-day basis when you're doing the dishes and when you're, figuring out life and finances and this, that, or the other? But when we went to the Dham, and really Krishna was in the center of our experience together, I really felt how much strength came from a shared spiritual practice and a shared spiritual connection. Definitely one of my favorite times.
Yeah, it was really bonding. And I remember it so fondly, and just want to be able to do that again one day. So, last question for us. What's the number one lesson that you've learned from these last 9 years?
So hard to come up with one lesson, but I think the number one lesson is how marriage continues to be work. I think that when we first got married, I didn't really understand. Well, let me reverse. When we first got together, I didn't really understand the whole relationship thing. You were my first relationship, all new territory, and I definitely was influenced by the American rom-com narrative. And I read a quote somewhere that said, a rom-com is only 2 hours and a marriage is a lifetime. So working on that and accepting that. But then at the beginning of our relationship, I thought, it's hard work for a couple of years. We got to just mesh together. We got to jive together, and then we'll settle into a groove and we'll be fine. Like, I remember being in year 1, seeing all these couples, 10 years married, 15 years married, 20 years married, like, oh, so it's just the beginning that's rough. You got to work out all your kinks and figure out how you're going to live together. But now at year 9, I'm like, wow, we are still in the thick of marriage at year 9, and it continues to take work. The relationship continues to need nourishment and proactive work. I need to continue to work on my own patterns that show up in relationships, my own triggers. I need to continue to work on the strength of my own spiritual life because that will feed into our marriage. We need to work on how logistically we're going to change roles and work together because that's also dynamic and changes as we have kids and as they grow. And so I think that's the number one lesson I learned, is that marriage is work. Marriage is hard. And I will say that that is completely normal.
Yeah.
I think that's the other lesson that I learned, because I always struggle that when we go through a hard patch, I feel like there's something wrong with us. You know, are we meant to be together? Was it a mistake that we got together? Are we compatible? You know, but just remembering that it is totally normal for marriages to be hard.
Yeah.
And for many years.
Yeah.
Because marriage is a lifetime. And every couple might have their pain points in different spaces. So it's not a comparison game. But marriage at the end of the day is work. It's hard. And it's the hard work that makes it worth it.
I also just add to that it's work. And I would say that that work is a spiritual opportunity. And if I was to take anything away from all of this, it's that marriage is a spiritual opportunity. You know, going back to that quote that you read, Bhakti Siddhanta, that the cardinal principle is that no one may be the owner or the master, right, of the other. And so it's a weird thing because in this phase of life, it's almost like because you have money, you have position, you have constituents, you know, family, you have a house, like you actually feel like you are the boss, or you are the man, or you are, you know, the lady of the house, or whatever it is. And it's but in that phase of life is the best opportunity to challenge yourself, because this is just my personal realization, is that in the institution of marriage, you cannot hide what you need to work on. Yeah. It's just you have to face it. And if we want to get better together, then we've got to keep facing those things and keep working through them together.
That is the baby.
Well,
yeah.
With that.
Wow, the endings of our podcast never fail to end in a weird way. Yes, I agree with you. It is a spiritual opportunity. And the baby is crying. And happy anniversary. I'm so happy that we basically got through our chat. And we definitely have to sign off now. But see you at the next episode. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.